Before we start the actual shir in the Baal Shem Tov, I want to mention something very, very important. For 2 years, I have been campaigning on and off, trying to speak to people to listen to my words, and they are actually vital and pikuach nefesh. I'm dedicating, first of all, this year, Le'ili Nishmas, all the people who are nifter in this attack by the terrorists, and for the refuah shlema of all those who need a refuah shlema, whether it's from the attack or any other refuah shlema that people need in Klal Yisrael. So the shir should be for that purpose. That's number one. Number two, I want to mention something that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, and it's very vital to our learning today and to the situation that we find ourselves in. We just finished Shmini Atzeres, and we know the Chazal that says, the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, Tatzor alai, Yom Echad. Leave it alone. Tatzor alai, Yom Echad, Kosher li pidaske, Kosher alai pidaske. Kodesh Baruch Hu asks us, after being together for 7 days, we were sitting in the sukkah and using the Arba Minim, and the sukkah is called in the Zohar Tzelah de Mahamenusa. It's the shade of Amunah. In other words, we're sitting under a flimsy hut, showing that we're willing to forsake our permanent abode and go into something which is very, very flimsy and no actual roof, some twigs, something of the nature, to show our emunah in Hashem, and He's our protector. We don't need any firm ceilings or roofs above us. All we need is Hashem to protect us. And we have the Arba Minim to demonstrate our emunah in the Parnasa. We have all the agricultural products that we use, and they're all together. You hold all 4 minim together, and you shake them, and you ward off all kinds of evil spirits and so on and so forth with this emunah and bitachon of all of the Arba Minim together. Shmini Atzeres, one day without the sukkah, after we finish 7 days of sukkah, one day without the Arba Minim, I want to be with you alone. So the question the Rabbi asked was, let's not fool ourselves. What are we going to accomplish? After Shmini Atzeres, again, we're going to have to be porei. We're going to have to leave Hashem's presence, so to speak. And again, the same longings will again reawaken themselves. So if it's one day later, one day earlier, what are we really accomplishing? Says the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the words of the Chazal, Kosher alai pidaschem, is not talking really about our separating ourselves from Hashem. It's talking about separating ourselves from ourselves. Kosher alai pidaschem, Hashem is concerned not about separating Himself or ourselves from Him. There's always going to be a connection there. What He's concerned about is the internal separation that exists within Klal Yisrael. The Preidah within Klal Yisrael. That's what He's worried about. When we don't sit in the sukkah, we don't have the sukkah to contain us and unite us, and we don't have the Arba Minim to show our emunah and bitachon and Hashem providing the parnasa. We don't hold the 4 together. Can we have this achdus without the sukkah, without the abaminim or not? That's the question. That's what Hashem wants on Shmini Atzeres. We should be able to continue the achdus, that it be a carryover, even though we don't have the external stimuli of the sukkah and the abaminim. We should nevertheless be able to maintain the attitude and the atmosphere of the achdus within us. And I don't have to tell you, Rabbi Sai, what's going on in the country. With the split between the right and the left, pro-reform, against reform, and so on and so forth. For 2 years, I have been speaking my heart out to people and reminding them of the Chazal of David HaMelech as compared to the time of Achav. David HaMelech, as great as he was, when they went to war, there were many casualties. And David HaMelech also was a victim of his own son trying to kill him. Whereas when Achav went to war, even though there was rampant avodah zarah in Achav's time, rampant rishus of any other kind, but nevertheless there was some kind of respect of Beinol Mechaveiro. They didn't want to speak Lashon Hara against each other. Came back from wars, don't forget, in those days everything was hand-to-hand battle. They came back from wars alive and unmaimed. This is what Chazal tell us. Why was that so? Because they had that internal protection of Ben Adam L'Chaveiro. That provides that achdus, that inner achdus, provides a protection greater than anything that can be on the outside. And they had it. For 2 years since the tragedy in Meron, over 2 years ago, where 45 people were killed by crowding and trampling and so on and so forth, people asked me, why isn't our material that our organization works on, isn't in all the schools? It would have prevented many people from dying in that crowded area by Rav Shimon Yochai on Lag BaOmer. We teach Midos Tovos, Beinos Mechaveiro, tolerance, so on and so forth. The answer to that question is the following. And I'm going to give you now, all of you, a task and a mission that can really change things in the world if we take it seriously and act on it. That's the following. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with a specific plan. His plan was Olam Chesed Yiboneh. He wanted the world to be one of each person helping the other. Olam Chesed Yiboneh. Doing for others. That was the attitude HaKadosh Baruch Hu expected to prevail in the world. But what is the prevailing attitude in the world, in the entire world? And in Eretz Yisrael, unfortunately, has also crept in. The entire world is mobilized by one principle, and that is what's in it for me. That's the principle that makes the world move. If a person has interest, personal benefit, an agenda that's good for him, he's interested, he's involved. If it doesn't involve him, not so important, doesn't bother me, I don't need it. That simple change of attitude makes the entire world what it is today. Everybody's got an agenda of some kind, their self-interest. Everything that's going on in the world, the entire immorality, the crime in the world, The corona, people say, also is really based on that. So we had a number of meetings with very important, influential people with how can we change this? If we don't change the thinking patterns of Am Yisrael, even if we're going to now come back and restore order down south and in Eretz Yisrael, how long do we think it'll last? As long as everybody's got their own personal agenda, their own personal interests, which motivates them, and that's the way it works. So it'll be another few years, and there'll be another war. Unfortunately, but the history of Eretz Yisrael since the beginning, 75 years, every 5 years or so, there's a war. Why is that so? That's so because the country is set up in the way the world works. You have Democrats, you have Republicans, you have two parties vying against each other. You have to have over here also the right and the left. The last elections, I remember, there were 37 parties in the ballots. 37 parties. Everybody's got their own agenda. Nobody wants to trust anybody else. Everyone's thinking that if they don't work for themselves, they're not going to get what they want. 37 different parties there were in the ballots, in the poll boxes there. If we don't change the thinking process in Eretz Yisrael, I don't see how we can possibly get out of the mess that we're in today. So how are we going to do that? I've spoken to big experts. It is possible to change it, but we have to all get together and devote time to it. And I'll tell you what we have to do. We had meetings of many, many people, and we need a slogan. Like 20 years ago, there was a Jew in France who was very upset with the religious level of Am Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. Nothing to do with right or left, Rechavia or not, just in general, the religiosity of Am Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. He wanted to see a higher level. So what he did was, he thought of a slogan, and he had the money for it, he paid all the radio stations throughout the country to say 3 words. Tehillim B'Shvil HaNeshama. I remember it. My wife remembers it. It was 20 years ago. Many of you may have not been in the country at the time, but we were, and we heard it every hour on the radio, just 3 words. Tehillim B'Shvil HaNeshama. And the country being basically is very, very religion-oriented, even though they're not very religious on the most part, but they are very, very traditional, Masorati. 95% of Am Yisrael keeps Yom Kippur. These words that they heard every hour on the radio, Tehillim B'Shvil HaNeshama, had an effect. You saw people in parks sitting and saying Tehillim, waiting for buses, waiting for the taxis, saying Tehillim. Why not? Doesn't threaten anybody, doesn't make you a Baal Tshuva. Tehillim B'Shvil HaNeshama, it's a good thing. If you hear it over and over and over again, it's a kind of positive brainwashing, which only has a very, very wonderful effect. So people accepted it, and they started saying Tehillim. That went on for about a half a year. I don't know what would have gone on in the country had it gone on for a year or two. But his hope, obviously, was that would be a bridge to bring Pringle closer to a higher level of religious observance. Starting somewhere, starting with Tehillim. So when that died out, I forgot about it. 2.5 years ago, when that tragedy happened in Meron, and people called me up asking about educational material to teach tolerance, to teach Derech Eretz, teach Ahavas Yisrael. It should be in all the schools. This reminded me of what happened with that Jew in France and how we did it? Why can't we make a program, a campaign throughout the country with a slogan, which will be heard every hour on the radio, like we used to hear before crossing at the crosswalk? It was very difficult. Now, today, you're not allowed to cross. You have a green light, of course, you cross. But a motorist who sees a person standing at a crosswalk, according to the law, has to stop. He has to give the walker the right to cross over the street, the pedestrian. That was a program, that was a campaign on the radio. And now that became a law. The car must stop for a pedestrian waiting to cross the street. Now that's an example of how a campaign on the radio, on TV, on posters was successful. And there's no reason why we can't have such a successful campaign to bring achdus and bring people to think not about themselves, but to think about others. So what kind of campaign, what kind of a slogan can we use? I'm going to show it to you, Rabbi Sai. And this is the slogan, and it was already accepted and said to be an excellent one. And if it all would be and seen on TV and on posters all over the country, it would have the same effect. Here it is. Simple. What Hillel told the guy who wanted to become a ger, he didn't tell him you have to lecha kamocha. He told him just this. If you want to add something, some people say you should add something, so we added something. Smile to him too when you say it, or when you think it. Just that statement alone is the Kol Torah Kula, the Gemara says. V'hashar Perusho. That will change people's attitudes if it's heard over and over and over again. And in order to do that, we must get it onto the media. And that is expensive. And I'm giving you the mission, Rabbi Sai. Now there in Eretz Israel are many, many wealthy people who came for Sukkot. They're not leaving the next day. They stay a few days. You have an opportunity to speak to these people and tell them they must contribute to the campaign, which is going to cost millions of dollars. We're not talking about a month or 2 months. We're talking about a year, 2 years, maybe more. Radio and television. Just to have one statement over and over and over again is very expensive. Within time, we can change the statement. But we must have a consistency and a stubbornness to get this into people's psyche. It has to be absorbed and internalized. It has to become a way of life. And it can be done. It's only a question of paying for the time. That's all. There are advertising companies and experts who know how to exactly put it in, when and where, and so on and so forth. It can be done. But it costs money. This is pikuach nefesh. Look what happened to us now. When we have this internal strife all the time, this is what weakens Klal Yisrael. And you think that the Goyim are not watching what's going on in the country? They all know, all over the world, what happened on Yom Kippur. Everyone knows. They know about the fight that's going on between the pro-reform and against reform. Pro-government against the government of Netanyahu. They all know it. That is the time when they know we're weak. And they were right. They caught everybody off guard. And look what they did. And they're not finished yet. Khalil Bachas, you should finish them off in no time. But look what happened already. How many people already paid with their lives? How many people are going to be sitting Shiva now? How many the hospitals are packed with severely injured people? So I'm asking everybody to help and take part in this campaign. Speak to the people that you know who can afford to donate, and then many of them can afford very, very easily large sums of money. You can contact me. I'm going to give you my email or my cell phone number and my email right now. Please write it down. And the information is the following. My cell phone number is 0522 677 812. That's also a WhatsApp number. 0522 677 812. That's my cell phone number and my WhatsApp number. The email is Ahav Emet, AHAV EMET, one word, Ahav Emet at or strudel 012.net.il. I'll go over it again. Ahav Emet, AHAVEMET, strudel or at 012.net.il. I think that is the most important thing that I could say today. We'll now go to the regular material for our shiur. And we're learning the Baal Shem Tov, his work that he has put out on Tefillah, Amunah Tefillah. And we're up to, you don't have the text in front of you, but I'll just have to read, and I hope you can listen and pay attention. We are dealing with a very big problem that exists, and it's something which should not be pushed under the table and say that's the way it is, that's life. We're dealing with communicating with Hashem. Tefillah, our prayer, is a communication at the highest possible level. The Zohar, there's opinions in the Zohar, when a person davens, he should not even hear his own words. His lips should be moving, pronouncing the letters, but it should be so low that his own ears cannot hear the actual sounds coming out. But it shouldn't be loud enough to disturb somebody else, but to his own, yes. Now, I'm trying to explain the opinion that holds that when one davens, one should, according to the Zohar, not even hear his own voice. The lips form the letters, but the voice should be so silent, such a whisper, that you cannot even hear yourself. The reason for that is that the real tefillah, the real communication is in the mind. It takes a tremendous amount of mental energy to contact Hashem, to try to make contact with Hashem. It takes full concentration. You cannot make concentration with Hashem just by something which is light in your mind. You have to fully focus. Put all of your energies in focusing on something. It's like when you're very, very interested, you're engrossed in something, you focus totally on that, and you can't even hear things on the outside. You don't hear anything because you're so totally focused. When a person's davening, he has to realize he's speaking with Ein Sof. He's speaking with his creator. And a person has to be totally focused, using all of his energy, his mental energy, to make that connection. And if you have to use some of your energy to listen to your voice, that is distracting. And therefore, if you have no hopes of listening to your voice, you're just using enough energy to form the letters with your lips. According to that opinion of the Zohar, that's sufficient. Doing more than that is going to distract from your contact with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So we're dealing with a very, very high and very, very subtle and delicate area, the area of machshava. And we know how machshavos come and go, and they fly in, they fly out, and in the middle of Shmona Esrei, all of a sudden, a foreign thought comes into your mind. What are you going to buy at the Makolet? Were you going after your davening? What happened before this year? All kinds of things come into your mind right in the middle of learning. So with that, or davening. When that happens, it's considered to be a real pagam in the way you're davening. It's something that has to be avoided at all costs. But it's such a great problem that the Baal Shem Tov said that anyone who thinks that they have a real cure to the problem, you should know that he's a phony. The world, the Satan, all of those things that are negative will not give up. They are relentless in trying to stop us from our communication. Furthermore, we have to realize that we ourselves may be guilty of those foreign thoughts coming into our minds. Because we know from Pirkei Avos, Ha'isa mitzvah achas, konelo sanego, Ha'isa avera achas, konelo katego. Now, if you're doing avera, it's not just that you have created a malach, which is a kateg, which is a prosecutor. That is a negative force. And that prosecutor, he tries to prosecute you and disturb you when you're davening and when you're learning. And those are the thoughts that we ourselves created by doing something which we shouldn't have done. So it's something that we have to try to combat, and it's not a light matter at all. Before one davens, person has to really zero in on what he's going to do. It starts when you wake up in the morning. You already have to have in your mind, what am I going to do now? You have to already have in your mind preparation. When you wake up in the morning, I'm going to shul. I'm going to meet my creator. I'm going to have a conversation with him. I'm going to communicate with him. You have to set your mind up to it all the way from the beginning. And as you're walking to shul also, there are some hold that no speaking, actually it's a halacha. You're not supposed to, if you see somebody in the street, try to avoid greeting them. If you think it's going to be a pagam in derech eretz, so you may say, Boker Tov, Tzafra Rab, Tzafra Tava. That's okay, but if you meet them that way, but not to go to Dafka to somebody, to look to him to say, Boker Tov. The first word you say should be to Hashem, to your creator. And if you meet somebody in the street, if you can just get by with just nodding your head before davening, that's the thing to do. Nod the head and go on to shul, your place of davening. And the first words you say should be to Hashem in the morning. So it's a whole mindset. When the person wakes up in the morning, if he wants to really daven properly, you can't just do it when you get to shul, and before that, you're reading the newspaper, taking care of this, taking care of that. It's got to be a mindset from the time you wake up. As if any important meeting a person has, with any personality, he prepares way ahead of time what he's going to wear, what he's going to say, and so on and so forth. All for that meeting. When you meet Hashem. For Vada, you have to have preparation and a zeroing in and a focusing on that meeting. And it's very, very difficult. It's something that you do every single day. It becomes sort of a habit. Well, that's why you have to have the preparation beforehand to make sure that it doesn't fall into that slot of just a rote kind of daily behavior. This is what I do. This is my Seder Hayom. Every single day has to be a new experience. And when you get to the shul, to the door of the shul, you have to stop at the door, not just to walk in. Here I am. You stop at the door of the shul, of the base of Midrash, the base of Knesset, not the building, but the room in which you're going to daven. And you have to say, Ani barov chastecha avo beisecha eshtachabel hel hekal kachecha b'yerasecha. To realize you're walking into the shul, you're now entering Hashem's chambers. When you walk into Hashem's chambers, you have to walk in with derech eretz, with humility. You bow to the Aron Kodesh, eshtachabel hel kachecha b'yerasecha. When you walk in, this all is part of the experience. It makes the davening more focused, and you have a much greater chance of davening properly with kavanah and not being disturbed by all kinds of extraneous thoughts. All right, so that's as far as the preparation is concerned. There's much more to say about it, but we can't get into all of the areas at this time. We're going to talk about what actually happens during the Shemona Esrei or during Kriyat Shema, and it actually could be even when you're not davening, the same thing. Like all kinds of thoughts come into your mind, and then you have sorrow and you have remorse that those thoughts came into your mind, and especially when you're supposed to be davening or learning, why should you be thinking of those things? So we're going to pick up where we left off on this topic. Before Elul, we had to take a break from it and do the davening of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So we're back to the topic now, and the Gemara says the following. The Gemara says in Brachos, Amar Rav Zera, Kol ha'omer Shema Shema Mishaskin oso. The person says Shema twice, you tell him, be quiet. Be quiet. You're not supposed to say Shema twice. Why do you say Shema twice? Amalei Papa Abaya, Dilma Mikara Lo Rechavin Daite. Why are you telling him to be quiet? He's saying it out loud, and you're telling him to be quiet? Maybe he didn't have kavanah the first time, and he wants to say it again the second time. There's no such thing as somebody else, a chavrusa. If he didn't have kavanah the first time, you hit him over the head so that he'll have kavanah. That's what the Gemara says. But you don't let him say it for the second time. So the Shem Tov asks, why not? He wants to do it the second time better than the first time. Maybe he didn't have kavanah the second time. He made the first time. So the Baal Shem Tov goes into an explanation of this inyan, and he says the following: Ha'adam mechuyev lahamin kimole kol haaretz kavodo yisbarach. A person must have a basic understanding that Hashem is everywhere. Mole kol haaretz kavodo. Les asa panamine. There is nothing which is absent from Hashem being on the inside of it. If there was such a thing, such a phenomena, that there was an absence of Hashem occupying that particular item in the world, the item would not exist. Everything is occupied by Hashem. Kol hamachshavos, all thoughts. Shel ha'adam yesh bo mitziuso yizbarach, v'kol hamachshava hu koma shleima. Every machshava that a person has, Hashem is within that machshava. It's an entire network. How the machshava came about and how it's built, and so on and so forth. It's not just one little fleeting thought. Every machshava is an entire network of complexity. Kashayale b'machshavto shel adam be'ez asko b'tfila ez a machshava ra. And when a person is davening, a machshava ra, an evil thought enters his mind. And why did it come to him in the middle of davening? You know why it came to him in the middle of davening? It could be, as we said earlier, that these are the mekatregim that we created when we did Averos. And they are always coming to us to bother us, to disturb us. We created them, and they are under us, so to speak. They're looking to us to get energy from us. We created them, we have to sustain them. Possible that they're coming to us for a tikkun. Possibly, even though we created them, we have the power to make a tikkun and let them go up to Shemayim where they belong. If the person doesn't believe that this is not considered Kabbalah's Olmach Shemayim Shleima. And that's why they bring Dafka, the Gemara, about, or the Mishnah who says Shema, because Shema Yisrael is Kabbalah's Olmach Shemayim. And if you don't realize what it means, Kabbalah's Olmach Shemayim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu occupies everything. As the Zohar says in its brought down in Tanya, Soivev kol almin umemale kol almin. If you don't have that basic understanding, then you're lacking in your understanding of what Hashem is and what means Malchus Shemayim. What you're saying is that Hashem is not here in this thought. You are shortening, you are saying that Hashem's presence is lacking in certain places. In this particular Makatrek, this Machshava Ra, Hashem is not there. It's only a Koach of Tumah that we created. Now let me ask you a question. How does the Koach of Tumah have the power to exist? What gives it the energy to exist? The entire world was created by Hashem. He created the Satan also. So even the Satan himself exists because Hashem is powering him. The Malach HaMaves was also created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything in the world, good and not good, must have HaKadosh Baruch Hu sustaining it. You must have him giving the koach for it to exist. Now, our job is not to destroy it necessarily, but to make sure that it has its place and it's on the back burner, so to speak. It's in a low ebb. We don't want to give it too much koach and too much prominence. I'll give you a very important example of how to understand that. Everybody has a desire to eat and drink. You get hungry, you get thirsty. You must have food or drink to satisfy that. When do you have it? Your body begins to crave it, so it expresses itself, and you have to have a drink or you have to have food. Now, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, that's how he wanted people to live. But if you take that urge to eat and drink, which was given to you so that you can live, and you put more attention to it than is necessary. You eat more than you actually need. You drink more or other kinds of liquids that you don't really need. What are we doing then? Then we're taking that koach, which was given to us to provide life, and we're giving it more attention. We're making it an end in of itself. We're making the urge to eat and drink an end in and of itself, the satisfaction of the eating and the drinking, and not for the purpose of living. The opposite of what a tzaddik does. The pasuk says, "Tzaddik ochel." A tzaddik has to eat too, but l'sova nafsho, not l'sova gufo. He does not do it to satisfy his body. He satisfies his nefesh, so his nefesh can stay in his body. So he has to have a certain amount of minimum food and drink to keep that relationship. He stays alive. But when that is taken out of hand, we give more than the attention that is necessary to the eating and the drinking. It becomes a taiva. It becomes destructive. And it's not there only to keep us alive. It becomes destructive and makes us be more, let's say, attracted to fulfilling our desires rather than to stay alive only. So that applies there, and now we can understand it also here with Shema Yisrael. We have machshavos. Of course we have machshavos. And we have to have a Kabbalah Tol Malchus Shemayim. And when we say Shema Yisrael, that's the maximum demonstration of a Kabbalah Tol Malchus Shemayim by saying Shema Yisrael. And when you say it the first time without kavanah, that means you were distracted by your Yetzer Hara, by the Satan. Your mind wasn't there. It was someplace else. But the ability to say those words, were they not provided by Hashem? Did Hashem not power you with the ability to say those words, even with the Machshava Ra'ah? The Machshava Ra'ah was not an existence that exists because Hashem gave it the power to exist. Of course, Hashem is Mamalei Kol Almin, Sovev Kol Almin. Hashem is the Metzias of everything, the real Metzias. And if you're saying, I got to say it again, because the first time it's worthless, that means you're saying Hashem is worthless. The words that came out are worthless. Hashem's not there. You want to say it again? Count? That is the Mikatzer, the Metzias of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is what the Shem Tov is teaching us. That is awesome. That's what the Mishnah says. Shema Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Mishasken Osai. You're not allowed to say it a second time. So how do you do it now? How do you correct what you did? That's what the Gemara says. You hit him over the head and you tell him, now have kavanah. Meaning what? Go back in your mind over the words. Look into the siddur a second time. And now have the kavanah that you were lacking the first time. But do not repeat the words. Repeating the words is saying that the first time your actions were worthless. And that is the makatzer and the Metzias of Kodesh Baruch Hu. You are saying that Hashem didn't exist. You said the words of your own accord. Hashem wasn't in those words. Well, who gave you the breath to say the words? Who gave your vocal cords the ability to say those words? Was it not Hashem? Even though the kavanah wasn't there, but there was enough kavanah to give your mind the command to speak. And where did that come from? Only because of Hashem. So you cannot repeat the words as if the first words were worth nothing. Hashem is in those words too. All right, you're lacking in kavanah. You had the wrong kavanah. Go over the words again. This time with kavanah. So the Baal Shem Tov says, now the words inside from the Baal Shem Tov. Im yeda shesham gam kein hu mitzias Shem Yitbarach. If you know that Hashem was in the first words too, lo hayatzorach lomar shnei pamim shema, v'zeh tzachas loshon hashas mechinin lo b'mazavta denavcha. You take a tool from a blacksmith and you hit him over the head. V'akavana. What is the point there? Says the Baal Shem Tov. Ki hamachshava atzma hu makeh ha'adam. The thought itself, he's saying, is actually hitting the person. The thought wants to be elevated. He came to you to be corrected, to be reconstructed. They're showing you're saying that Hashem didn't exist. He's not here. So now we understand very well what the Mishnah says, why you can't say Shema twice. Now I'll say this for everything. This applies to not only applies to any bracha that you make. You say a bracha without kavanah, you cannot repeat the bracha. According to this, you have to go over the bracha in your mind, and this time have the kavanah. There is a inyan of a mitzvah d'oraisa has to have kavanah. Mitzvah strichas kavanah. And if you didn't have the kavanah to be makayim the mitzvah d'oraisa, you're not yotze the mitzvah. So you have to repeat the mitzvah again. For instance, the Arba Minim. If you took the Arba Minim and you made the bracha, and you didn't have the kavanah to be makayim the mitzvah of lulav, because Hashem said to do it, you're lacking in the basic kavanah of a mitzvah d'oraisa, or you're sitting in the sukkah, and according to the Bach and other Rishonim, since it says by sukkahs laman yedu d'orasechem, ki b'sukkot hashavtis b'nei Yisrael b'rotzios l'memories Mitzrayim, you have to have that kavanah in addition to the fact that Hashem said it's a mitzvah to sit in the sukkah. And if a person didn't have those two kavanahs, so he has to, I would say, get up and sit down again. And this time, or sit down and have the kavanah. I'm sitting in the sukkah, in the mitzvah say the raisa of the sukkah teishru, shivas yamin, and the manyedu d'orasechem. So you can redo the Maisa, but you actually what? You're actually having the kavanah. A second time you didn't have the first time. The second time you do the Maisa, you're going to have the kavanah. It's a klal gadol of mitzvah strichas kavanah. So the same thing happens in Shmona Esrei. You go through Shmona Esrei, you realize you didn't have kavanah in what's the day, Lemal Shinim, or Ritzei, or Sim Shalom. Should you go over it? You realize you just were thinking about something else altogether. You just said the words automatically. No, you don't repeat it, but you should go over the words again in your mind and put your finger on the words in the siddur, and this time have kavanah. But not to repeat the words themselves, but dibur. Repeating the words, you're showing that what you did the first time is not at all of any value. What do you mean it's not value? You wouldn't be able to say it if Hashem didn't give you the kayach. Hashem is in those words, so it has value. You are lacking the proper respect to Hashem by having the kavanah. Okay, go back to the kavanah. Now fill in the kavanah. But not to repeat the words again. The Shem Tov goes further. The Gemara asks in Bechoros, a froach shemes biklipaso. The chick that died, it's still in its egg shell. Mehecha nafik ruche. Where does the nefesh go out of? Umeshani mehecho the ayel nafik. The way it came in, that's the way it goes out. The Gemara needs an explanation. Yomal alpi shas the brachos per karola. The Shem Tov explained it using a Gemara in brachos, and I think we're too late to go into the whole Gemara. We'll have to stop at this point right over here now. Mitzvah Shem, on next Sunday we'll go up to this point again, and we'll pick it up from here because it's just about now the time. We have 1 minute left. So I want to ask anybody if anyone has any questions on what we learned or about our campaign that we want to start running as soon as possible. Anybody have any questions regarding the campaign or what we learned today? So no questions. So I guess everyone is more or less in agreement. So I hope that after this year, people will have some contacts with me about people who they think are candidates and able.
Rob, can you hear me?
Campaign which is mamish pikuach nefesh. What greater example of what happens when we have internal distress, internal infighting that can happen to Am Yisrael. The matzah that we're in right now. This is all because of a lack of achdus that we have inside. We don't have to worry about our enemies on the outside. We have to worry about the enemy within us. We have to get this straightened out. It can be done. And we can't expect it to be in one day, but Hashem will see that we're making the efforts. Things will change. You have to start in the right direction, and Hashem will give us Shiyata V'Shmaya. It's a hard campaign. It's going to be a long-lasting campaign, an expensive campaign. But what's expensive campaign when it comes to saving lives? Already that we know, you've heard this morning, 200 were lost. Men, women, children. We hope that nobody else is going to go, and then everyone will recover, Mitzvah Hashem. But we must take this seriously. And I ask you, spread this to your friends and ask them also to take part in finding people who can contribute. And there are many here who can contribute to this campaign. I'll leave you with that. And I hope to see you, Mitzvah Hashem, next Sunday.